Hi everyone. So welcome. Today we're just going to be reviewing what it means to solve a quadratic using the quadratic formula. First, we have to recall that the formula is the solution is given by x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now, in order for us to use a quadratic formula to solve, we need one side of the equation to be equal to 0. So based on the question that we have, it says x squared minus 5x minus 10 is equal to 4. We are to solve that equation, but we can't solve right now because the equation is not equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to set the equation equal to 0. We do that by getting rid of the 4 that is on the right side, and it's a positive 4, so we would subtract 4 from both sides of the equation. If you subtract 4 from 10, then what happens is you'll add those two terms together, and your resulting quadratic equation will become x squared minus 5x minus 14 is equal to 0. Now that the equation is equal to 0, we can start the solution process. We normally do this by by identifying the values for a, b, and c in the equation. So in this particular case, a is equal to 1, b is equal to a negative 5, and c is equal to negative 14. Once we have identified that, we're going to plug these values into the quadratic formula in their appropriate places. So negative b, so we're going to start with minus a negative 5, plus or minus negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a was 1, and or c term is negative 14, over 2 times a, and a was 1. So we begin by plugging in our values into the quadratic formula, and next we want to evaluate these values, simplify the expression. Remember, we're solving for x, so x is always equal to. We want to pay attention to these signs right here. We're noticing we have two negatives, and wherever we have two negatives, that will become a positive, so that becomes a negative 5 minus a negative 5, which means 5 plus or minus the square of negative 5 squared is 25, minus 4 times 1, that is a negative 4, minus 4 times negative 14, all over 2. So x is equal to 5 plus or minus square root of 25. Negative times a negative gives a positive. So 14 times 4. 14 times 4. That is 56. So we're adding 56 to what we have on the inside of the radical sign, or the square root sign divided by 2. We're then going to simplify what is inside the square root symbol. So we have x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of, when we add 56 plus 25, we get 81 all over 2. And what we realize is that that number 81 is actually a perfect square. And so 81 is a perfect square, which makes our solution a little bit easier. So x is equal to, we are now going to take the square root of 81, so it's 5 plus or minus with square root of 81, that is 9 over 2. So there are going to be two solutions for this perfect square. under the square root, x is equal to the positive root of 81, which is plus 9, over 2. And the second solution is going to be x is equal to the negative root. So it's 5 minus 9 over 2. We can simplify each of those. So 5 plus 9, that is 14 divided by 2. That's going to be equal to 7. And 5 minus 9 is going to be negative 4 over 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So the two solutions that we have for x are x equals 7 and x equal negative 2. So once again, a quick recap. We cannot solve the quadratic formula until the one side of the equation is equal to 0. The part of the quadratic formula that we first want to simplify is the portion under the radical sign or under the square root. And based on the work that we just did, if there is a perfect square under the square root, we just continue by finding the square root of that number, which is going to be a whole number, and we can remove the radical sign and solve to find both of our solutions. So now we want to look at a situation where the possibility of that we have is one where we don't get a perfect square under the radical sign. So always start with writing out your quadratic formula. As a reminder, x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's a song that you can sing to remember this. Then we want to start out by making sure that one side of our equation is equal to 0. Right now it's not equal to 0, it's equal to 5, so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So the resulting equation is x is equal to 2x squared plus 3x minus 20 is equal to 0. When we do that, the next thing we want to do is identify a, b, and c in the equation. So a is 2, b is 3, and c is negative 20. After we've done that, we're going to plug those values into the formula. So this is going to be minus 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times a negative 20 all over 2 times 2. Once we're done with that, we want to simplify the information under the radical sign. So it's negative 3 plus or minus. What is 3 squared? We want to do the exponents first. So 3 squared is 9 minus 4 times 2, that's 8. 8 times a negative 20 is going to be a positive. 8 times negative 20 is going to give us a negative 160. Ooh, this one ends up having a perfect square over 4. X is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 169 over 4. We continue by finding the radical, the square root of the number under the radical sign. 169 happens to be a perfect square, so again, this is going to be a whole number, so x is equal, it has two values, negative 3 plus or minus, what's the square root of 169? That's 13 over 4. You're going to split the answers in the event that the square root is positive. X is equal to negative 3 plus 13 all over 4. And in the square root, in the event that it's negative, x is equal to negative 3 minus 13 over 4. You want to plug these into your calculator. This is going to be positive 10 divided by 4. And 10 divided by 4 is equal to 2.5. In this case, it's negative 16 divided by 4. And negative 16 divided by 4 is going to be negative 4. So the two solutions that work in this case are x is equal to 2.5, and x is equal to -4. Now, in the event that you get a number under the radical that is not a perfect square, which is kind of what I was going for in this case, what you do is you can leave the answer under the radical sign, or you find the square root and round it to 2 decimal places. So generally that is what you would do. So in this particular case, they're asking us to show that the solution for the quadratic formula is the one shown here. This was a cool down you did on Monday. So A is equal to 1 in this case. B is equal to -6, and C is equal to a +2. We're going to plug those values into the formula, so it's minus a -6, -6 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 2. And that's going to be 2 times 1. We'll simplify. X is equal to a +6, and negative times a negative gives a positive, plus or minus the square root of -6 squared. -6 times 6, that's 36, minus 4 times 1, that's 4. 4 times 2, that is 8, all over 2. So when we simplify that, we get x is equal to 6 plus or minus 36. So we want to complete what is under the radical sign first. 36 minus 8 is going to be equal to 28, and that is going to be over 2. So as you can clearly see, we're getting showing that the answer is here. When the answer under the radical sign is not a perfect square, feel free to leave the square root or the radical sign in your answer. So we have 2 solutions for x. X is going to be equal to 6 plus the positive square root of 28 divided by 2, or x is equal to 6 minus, we're going to do square root of 28 over 2. There you have it. Hope this was helpful. Good luck.